Is
Yeah.
mustard oil healthy? And the reason I ask this is because I just don't know. It's one of those things that I'm not sure of myself. Indians have been
Okay,
eating
if you,
mustard oil for
I'll
quite a
tell you,
while.
I'll tell you. If you talk to the guys overseas, right, who are going crazy behind seed oil, right? So for them, everything is a seed oil, right? But if you ask me, I have not seen convincing studies against two types of oils which are very common in Asia and South Asia. Okay, one is mustard oil, okay, and second is sesame oil. Both these
Interesting.
oil, yes, both these oils are used all over China, Malaysia, South India, sesame, and mustard oil is popular in certain parts of North. But I'll tell you the intelligence of how this was used. These are not oils that are used every single day for every single thing. These oils are what I call, in Hindi we call them tadkas, or they are flavoring agents, or they are used for specific dishes in specific season, right? So, a good example that I can give you from the north is your sarson ka saag happens in sarson ka tel, correct?
Right.
Sarson ka tel doesn't get used in everything, right? Similarly, I'll give you an example down south. When we eat idli and the powder, the gunpowder that South Indians eat with the idli, we may put a little bit of ghee on the idli, but the powder for that we use sesame oil. Okay, you know
Hmm.
how little that is? That is 1 teaspoon. Okay, but we are not frying, cooking, and making everything in these oils. So the intelligence, if you ask me, is to rotate your cooking fat between ghee, butter, coconut oil, depending upon which part of the country you are. If you have access to good quality olive oil, yes, and seasonally sesame and mustard oil.
Awesome. And one more question, and this is just because a lot of people have asked me this online. Is eating a lot of saturated fat healthy?
Completely depends upon who's asking the question, and it is it's multifactorial. Okay, now you don't have to fear saturated fat to the extent that it is recommended to keep it below 6% of your overall intake. I think that is bullshit. That translates to almost like 1.5 or 2 tablespoons of ghee. Okay, but the question to ask with saturated fat is, if you're using it in a way you're supposed to use it. So, for example, certain saturated fat comes along with protein itself, especially animal protein. And if you're eating a little bit of red meat, eggs, paneer, you will get that saturated fat. Now, if you're going to use ghee and butter, okay, uh, you'll get a little more. Now, let's quantify this. Let's say, on an average, you are eating both from food sources and cooking sources. Let's say you're eating 80 grams of total fat, 70 to 80. Unless you start using cooking sprays and going really lean, it is difficult to be under 40 grams of fat in total. Out of these 80 grams, if half is coming from saturated fat, it's actually not a problem. Okay, now this has to be correlated with two, three things. One, obviously, how your lipid profile is working, and there is a lot of, again, cofactors to that, your genetics and things like that. And second is, are all your other parameters okay? So I'm never the one who will say ignore LDL cholesterol, and I'm never going to say eat any amount of saturated fat you want. And I will tell you one more thing: this eating of the butter stick trend that is going on in the carnivore community is very unsettling, because that's not how. I mean, if we talk about ancestral nutrition, hunter gatherers were not eating sticks of butter either, right? So I don't get where this sticks of butter is coming from. But the way I look at it is, if all your other metabolic markers are great and you're lifting and you're doing well. So other metabolic markers, meaning your triglyceride, your HDL, your triglyceride to HDL ratio, your height to waist ratio, your fasting insulin, your HbA1c, your fasting blood sugar, postprandial. If all of this is in control, and let's say you have a slight elevation of LDL cholesterol, which is, say, it's supposed to be 100 as per blood markers, but let's say it's up to 130, 140, 150. Personally, I have never seen it manifest into anything to worry about. Okay, but if all the other markers that I told you are crappy, and your LDL cholesterol is 140, 150, 180, 200, then you have a lot more work to do with your saturated fat, with your other markers, and you better look at LDL cholesterol. So I know it's a roundabout way of saying, of kind of following a middle ground, but I don't think you can very, very confidently say that any amount of saturated fat is good for you. No. But it doesn't have to be feared to the extent that you have to restrict it to 1 tablespoon in a day. And you have to completely eat egg white only. You throw away the yolk. That one odd or two odd times in a week that you're eating red meat, you worry about it, or you're going on chasing lean meat of every kind and feeling miserable. You don't have to do